Hi there, this is Andrea Mowry of Drea Renee Knits, and this is a little weekly podcast where I try my best to answer some of your questions. Today I am wearing my brand new, just released yesterday, Come Back Again. That name is because this cardigan is to celebrate our return home, coming back to Michigan, the Come Back Again. A little bit about the sweater before we jump into questions. So this past summer, we decided to return to our home state, and I had some yarn from North Bay Fiber hanging out, and I grabbed a skein, and I just absolutely loved that their heritage yarn was milled, grown, milled, and dyed in Michigan. And I thought, well, what a fun yarn to use for a pattern as we're getting ready for this move back home. So I absolutely fell in love with their heritage line. It is a woolen spun. It comes in quite a few different weights. I chose the sport weight for this pattern, and I knew I wanted a cardigan. A lot of times I get asked, like, where does the design process start for you? And it really depends. Like it can start with the yarn. Sometimes I just have an idea and I'm like, ooh, I really want to try this or a stitch pattern. But sometimes I also am looking at my wardrobe and going, okay, what am I lacking? What do I feel like, oh, I just really wish I had like this perfect cardigan to throw on. So this is the Come Back Again. It uses one of my all-time favorite stitch patterns, which we've talked about on here before. I used it in the oxbow cardigan, the Gib pullovers, the hoarfrost shawl, big cozy cardi, the oxbow sacks. I've used it all over the show. It is a great knit purl stitch pattern. It's only a 4-stitch repeat. It's pretty darn easy to memorize, and even to be able to find your way just looking visually as you're at your stitches, you can kind of find where your spot is. The other really cool thing about it is it's beautiful on the right and the wrong side. So I've used different sides of it in different patterns, which I always think is really fun. So I'll just show you a little close-up of that stitch pattern. It has pockets, which many of us love. Yeah, so there it is. This is my red version. This is Holly. I knit two because I seem to do that with a lot of my patterns. I tend to knit two of them. But I'm not complaining with this one because I'll tell you what, I've been wearing it so much. It's a really relaxed fit. I'm wearing it with 8 inches of positive ease around the widest part of my torso. And it's just so comfortable. I feel like I've been able to dress it up. I've worn it with like a long skirt. I've worn it with jeans. Right now I just have leggings on. So anyways, I'm really loving it. I hope you love it too. If you're a newsletter subscriber, make sure to check your inbox because there is a special discount for the sweater, which is always just for my newsletter subscribers. And then I also got to include a special discount from Hall & Hoof Farm Store, which is super, super cute shop that sells ceramic and wood buttons. So anyways, check your inbox if you're a subscriber. Okay, did I forget anything? Again, it's North Bay Fiber, Heritage Sport. This is color Holly. I think that's everything. Yeah, okay, let's jump in. Let's jump in to some questions. If I forgot anything, I'm sure it'll pop into my head. This could be a great one for my quicker knitters. You've got 6 weeks about, give or take, a couple days of the March to May knit along. And so I'm so curious if anyone will finish up this or the DRK Everyday Cardi that I just released a couple weeks ago. That was my March release. So I'm curious if anybody will get these finished for the knit along that goes through May 31st, and it's for shawls and sweaters. So I always link all the current knit along info and everything below in the show notes, so you can check it out there. And I guess that's it. Question time. Question number 1. I love your new Come Back Again. Yay! I think you've mentioned in the past that oxbow and Gib are reverse sides of the same stitch pattern. Yes, they are. I wear my Gib pullover all the time and love that side of the stitch pattern. If combackigan is the oxbow stitch pattern, do you think it would be feasible to knit combackigan inside out to show the other side of the pattern? Okay, so let's see. I'll kind of show you. So this is the underside. So you see this is the other. So yes, this is the stronger pattern, the right side facing out pattern on the gib raglan. And this is the right side of it that we're using for combackigan. So the other side, this is the knit dominant side. The other side's purl dominant. And so if you like, it does feel like it has a stronger texture than this side. The side is like a little flatter, I would say, because it's mostly knit stitches. So if you prefer the gib side, I don't see why you couldn't have that end up being your right side. I'm just looking at my own, thinking if there would be any areas where that would be an issue. I think that would be fine. I'm gonna, in all honesty, I'm wearing my workout outfit. We're going to the, we're gonna go get some exercise after this. So we're just gonna take this off. I just am looking at the raglans, because that's the only thing I was thinking is sometimes the shaping on the other side doesn't like look the same as it does on the right side, but I think the raglans look really nice on that side too. Like it still looks very purposeful. So absolutely, the only thing you would need to think about is when you go to pick up your button band, you're gonna wanna have it inside out already so that what you want to be the right side, which is the wrong side on mine, is what's facing when you go to pick up your stitches for your button band. And I honestly think that's like the only thing I can see right now that you would need to do differently to make that your right side. So super fun, do it and let us know how it goes. I think that would be beautiful. I wish you could share a photo in the comments here. Wouldn't that be fun? So whenever I'm asking people like, tell us how it goes, you could come back and share a photo with us and be like, this is how it went. Hopefully really good. Okay, let's go on to the next question. Yarn substitutes for mohair in the tessellated cardigan. Speaking of cardigans, I love, let's see. Okay. I need a cardigan in my life and was looking into beginning on the tessellated cardigan. I am a colorwork junkie and it looks like it will be quite fun, but I also tend to overheat easily. I was wondering if you think it would work to sub out the mohair fuzzy yarn for a regular fingering weight yarn, or if that would change the weight, drape, or warmth of the sweater, making it too warm. Please let me know your thoughts. So the nice thing is it's actually, those fuzzy yarns tend to be warmer than the non-fuzzy yarns. A lot of times, especially like an alpaca, is a very warm yarn. So is a cashmere, the fluffy cashmere ones. So is mohair. So I think putting in a non-fluffy yarn actually will be fine. As far as what to sub in, so technically those fuzzy yarns are lace weight is how they're classified. Now, I will say one thing I found is that the fuzzy yarns bloom more, they expand and puff more and kind of fill in the fabric after they're blocked, after they're washed, than maybe a regular plied yarn, non-fuzzy yarn. So I think you could probably sub in a fingering weight yarn just fine. I would definitely do a swatch though and check your gauge. So that's really what you need to look at, is just to make sure that the yarn you're choosing subs in okay with the gauge you need to hit for that cardigan. And otherwise I would recommend like a light fingering if you can find one, or you could also try a lace weight regular yarn. But yeah, you'll just have to play around with that. I just want to see. So I have on my patterns dating back to 2020, we do some yarn alternates on those. I'm just looking for this file quick. Just to help give some ideas for other yarns that could be used in a pattern that are more budget friendly. We still try to focus on them being able to be sourced from your local yarn shop if possible, because we always want to support our local yarn stores. So let me just see here. I'm looking to see in that file. So you can always find that link at the bottom of the pattern page. It will say, you see exactly what it says. It will say yarn substitution ideas, and it's at the bottom of the details, and it's a hyperlink, and you can click that and it'll take you to this PDF. Let me go back to that now. Okay, so I think these are all fluffy. They are all fluffy. Okay. I just wanted to check to see if we offered any not fluffy substitutes, but we're trying to give people generally a closer substitute to the yarn I used. So it makes sense that we wouldn't have a non-fluffy one in there. But I would also, if you are on Ravelry, check the project pages, because I'm sure there's other people who have done non-fluffy yarns. So you could also just see, did they use a fingering weight or a lace weight, and you can kind of look at their picture to see if you can see a little bit about their drape and how the sweater turned out. But you absolutely can sub in a non-fluffy yarn. And there was one thing, it will not make it too warm. Okay, and otherwise in drape, again, the weight of it, if you're finding one that's gonna help, you're gonna hit gauge and it's not, you know, I wouldn't sub in a sport weight. I would definitely do fingering or lace. But I don't really think it'll overly affect the weight or the drape. I mean, it really does come down to your total yarn choices, what you're using for those 3 different yarns. Is that the only one you're subbing in that's gonna be different? Are you using all different yarns that are different than what I used? So I can't fully answer that, but Gauge Swatch is gonna help answer that for you so that you know, like, okay, yeah, this still feels like a really nice fabric for this cardigan. But yeah, definitely, you can absolutely, fuzzy yarns are not for everybody. Sometimes people can find them irritating or too warm, like you said. So sub what you love. Okay, question number 3. I have gained some weight since getting older, but I love my hand knit sweaters so much that I don't want to throw them out. Have you ever tried to adjust the measurements of your sweaters or cardigans, and how would you do that? The idea that came to mind for me was for your pullovers. So if you currently have pullovers, and it depends on how much of a size difference you would need to make, but if it's just an inch or 2 that would help that sweater be more comfortable, I would consider turning them into cardigans. And so I would do a reinforcement using a sewing machine or a crocheted reinforcement, and I would cut that sweater open and turn it into a cardigan. The nice thing is if you don't care about being able to wear it closed, like I'm wearing this one closed right now, if it's something that you would just want to wear open, then that's a really easy way to help that sweater fit our ever-changing bodies, because if it doesn't have to be closed, then you can wear it open with quite a few inches in between, and that's going to be fine. If you do want to wear it closed, that's going to limit kind of how much space that you can add between those 2 edges. I generally wouldn't want to do much more than like a 2-inch button band. But that does add 2 inches, 5 centimeters to a sweater, which might be all that you need. So again, I would steek it, and I would pick up a button band and knit that on. If you want to be able to close it, include buttonholes. You can find lots of tutorials for different buttonholes and things like that, and for steeking all over YouTube. But that was the idea I had. Now, depending on if you also need space in the sleeves and things like that, that's where it might get a little more limited, because blocking can take you a little ways. Like how we block something can affect how much it opens up, and we can kind of pull things horizontally. You just have to keep in mind that that's going to reduce the length, because as we pull this way, it shrinks up a little bit, and that also is going to have its limitations. But Depending on how much you want to change the size, I think turning something into a cardigan would be the first place I would go. And if you wanted to do, again, if you didn't care about being able to close it like this, then a shawl collar can also be like a really nice way to change something up, depending on, you're already going to have an existing collar on your sweater. So maybe I wouldn't do that. Depending on how you originally knit that sweater, if you could take out the collar, because you would want to knit the collar with like a full collar. So that wouldn't work if you already had like an existing little guy there. But anyways, cardiganizing is what I would recommend. If anybody else has any tips or has played around with modifying sizing post all done and after you've worn it a while, please feel free to share. That would be such a nice thing for all of us to learn from. Have as a tool in our toolkit. All right. It is spring now where I live, and I am about ready to block all my sweaters that I have worn during the winter. I really don't like the crease at the top of the shoulders and down the sleeves that is created when the sweater dries flat. Do you have any suggestions as to prevent this from happening? So I've actually seen, I was just looking like, do I have it? I don't think this one has much of a line, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And we've had similar chats to this before where people have thrown in their ideas. So I remembered a few of the things that people recommended. One is some people use a pool noodle. So, you know, those kind of foam, big, long, looks like a giant straw noodle that you can swim with. They'll cut that down to size and stick that in their sleeves. Or anywhere where you don't want to crease, because it just helps give this rounded edge so that it's not drying with this fold line in it. So pool noodle is one idea. Those are also nice because they're not absorbent. Like they're not going to soak in the moisture and keep your sweater wet longer while you're trying to have it dry. So that would be one. Also just using, you know, depending on where you are, plastic bags are not as common as they used to be, which is great. But if you do still have any plastic bags lying around or a garbage bag or something, you could also bulk up the sleeve, putting some plastic bags in there, again, just to keep it from lying flat with a crease. It'll kind of help keep its shape up a little bit. I feel like I've even heard of somebody say newspaper. I would not do newspaper because I would be really afraid that the ink would bleed. And also newspaper is going to soak up the moisture and get real funky in that sleeve. So that's why I would recommend something like a plastic bag or a garbage bag, because it can't absorb any moisture, so it's not going to stop your sweater from drying. The mailman's here and my dog is really trying to say hello. Sorry about that if you can hear that. But there's some of my favorite tips for helping that situation. If you don't want to do that extra step when blocking, because if you are storing these for the season, I don't know if you are, but you're getting into spring. Sounds like you're gonna wash them all. So if you're gonna store them, you're gonna end up with fold lines probably in them anyways, just from being stored now for summer. So one thing to consider too is a handheld steamer is so helpful for things like that. When I am doing these little weekly podcasts and I always want to wear a hand knit, sometimes I'll pull out a sweater I haven't worn in a while and it has a big fold line in it. So I just take my little handheld steamer and I use that, and you just hold it near that crease, and then you can even kind of like set that down, let it cool for a second, but kind of pat out any crease too if you need to while it's hanging. But that works really well for me. So that's an option too. All right, last question. My question today is about socks. I have been doing your 3-ply 2 ways challenge, and when I went to finish my first sock, I used the Tubular cast off. However, it was not as stretchy as the ribbing in the sock, and then I couldn't fit my sock over my ankle. I ripped back, but wanted to know what I'm doing wrong on the bind off that it would be so tight. Are there any tips for getting the Tubular bind off to be more stretchy? I know it says in the pattern to bind off loosely in pattern, or perhaps use Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, but I guess I always thought a Tubular bind off was supposed to be a stretchy bind off, and Jenny's tends to flare out when I use it. Okay, so yes, for your Tubular bind off, basically, tubular bind off is Kitchener stitch. We are grafting that last round of live stitches together. And I love it. That is what's right here. And you can see on my sleeve, it is stretchy. But you know what? That's the cast on edge. I just did this the other day where somebody was like, wait, isn't that the cast on edge? Still a tubular, but it is the cast on edge. I actually think in this sweater, I think the only tubular area is the button band, and I won't even be able to tell what side. Let's see if you can see it. There's a glare in here because I'm doing this early, but boop, boop, nice and stretchy. Boop, boop, nice and stretchy. One of those is the cast on, one is the bind off. I think this one's the bind off. Boop, boop. So yes, it has the potential to be really nice and stretchy. We just have to really take care. I think what tends to happen for people is we really want that to be tidy, right? We're going through the effort of this tubular bind off because it's so polished looking. It's really beautiful finish to our knits. So we want to keep it nice and tidy, but sometimes I think we overcompensate and we just tug too much while we're doing that Kitchener stitch, and it ends up putting a hard line in our edge instead of a nice flexible line. So one of my favorite tips that I've shared here before is I like to do like every inch or so, I just give a little tug, and I just make sure like a tug out, and that just helps me know, okay, is my Kitchener stitch loose enough? Am I tightening up at all? And if you keep an eye on it, really you just pull your yarn through enough so that there's no remaining yarn slack hanging out, but don't cinch it. If you notice your stitches go as you pull to go into the next couple stitches to Kitchener them off, you're probably doing it too tight. So don't over tug. Pull it through just enough so that it's neat and tidy, and then it should be a nice flexible edge for you. As far as the jennies, so let's say you tried the tubular again and you're like, oh, I'm still having trouble with this. It's too tight for this sock. One thing to consider with jennies stretchy is it might be the way you're doing your yarn over. So just make sure that your yarn over is coming over the back of your needle so that it is shorter than a traditional yarn over that you would wrap the other way, because that's going to change how tidy that bind off is. So yeah, that would be my couple of tips if you end up deciding you want to try jennies again. But just check, always do a little check while you bind off, and that'll kind of give you a really good idea with your tubular bind off if you're starting to tighten up too much. All right, so as I said, I'm wearing the Come Back Again knit up in North Bay Fibers Heritage. Check your inbox if you're a subscriber to use your discount. And we've got the March to May knit along going. We've got our spin along challenge going. I am almost done with my sock, which we've got till May 10th. I was just checking the date. I was like, what did I put as the end date? Am I gonna finish in time? I'm almost done with my second sock. I was in Tulum teaching this past week, which if you saw the last episode, then you may have seen the one I recorded there. And that was kind of my beach knit. So I'm really close. I probably have half the cuff left. So I have a little bit of work knitting I need to prioritize, but I really can't wait to finish up those socks and get them into a bath and take some photos. So I'll definitely share updates of that soon. And I think that's about all we have for this week. So thank you so much for spending a little time with me this weekend. I hope that you are having a great day with some making, maybe your favorite beverage, maybe some creative friends around you. And if you have a question you would like to ask, you can find a link at the bottom of the show description that you can click to submit your question. And I hope to see you back here next week. Bye.